You're a trooper. Yeah, I've been battling some weird stomach flu, and we're waiting for my wife's water to break. So I thought, I thought we were gonna be already in the hospital, but no, just chilling at home.
How exciting, though. Are you taking some time off?
How do you define off, Jeff?
Are you gonna stream? You're not gonna stream it. You're not gonna stream it, are you?
No,
He's bringing the whole camera crew.
I mean, I would, but I would get murdered as well. So that'd be my last stream.
I mean, that would be a pretty epic one to go out on.
You'd get some views. Yeah.
It definitely gets some views. Yeah.
I'm tempted, but no, I'd get murdered.
And we'd all side with her 100%. So
yeah. I mean, no, but I'm not going to the site probably for, I don't know, like a week maybe, working from home here and there. I hear the newborns, like, there's not much really to do. They wake up, you got to feed them, they go back to sleep. I'll help out a little when I'm needed, but yeah, I think it gets more active when they're toddlers. So got a couple years.
Got a little time.
It never gets better. It just gets different, you know. I got an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old.
What words of wisdom? Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I got to get notes for me.
Yeah. Well, here's my note. Don't listen to anyone. Just do what you're saying. Like everyone's got advice to give.
I already do that.
Yeah, well, fair.
That's cool.
Very true. I don't think that was something we would expect from Dan anyway. Like, oh, actually, but do you have a Vivo onesie ready? Because
a Vivo onesie, no. They're no longer a sponsor, which is sad.
Oh, shoot.
They had a lot of people get promoted. Shout out to Bree and Abby. But Creo and Inato, maybe I get a Creo and Inato onesie. Or maybe Viva.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right,
we're just putting it out there. Anybody that wants to send
they're listening. Yeah,
I'll take a onesie.
Send a onesie.
Thank you.
Well, very good. Well, I'm going to do, I know you made the rounds for sure, but still like to start every episode out a little bit of the same as tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of, how you got into clinical research and where you're at today.
Sure. My name is Jess Thompson. I've been in clinical research for about 15 years. I'm actually one of the weirdos that went to school for this. I have a degree in biology. After I got out of college, I started working in a lab when I was in college, processing samples, DNA, isolation, all that fun stuff. And then did some PCR work and everything in college, moved to a lab processing clinical trial specimens after I graduated from college. I was at the University of Washington. From there, the grant was ending. So an opening actually came up for a clinical trial coordinator role. So I moved to a clinical trial coordinator role after the lab. And then that kind of started really the trajectory for the rest of my career. So I worked a lot of IRB. I was that kind of catch-all coordinator, right? So I did IRB, help with protocols, help with grants, all of those kind of things, patient recruitment, study samples, processing the study samples, all of those fun things. So started there and then moved to another academic medical center. And I worked more only in regulatory there just because it's kind of hard to find that person that has done regulatory. So that's where I moved into because I had that skill set. And then moved to Vanderbilt and worked in their clinical trial center and part of their NCATS grant. At the time, they were the Trial Innovation Network, the Recruitment Innovation Network, and the Trial Innovation Center. So I kind of got to see academic medical centers all over the country utilize that NCATS grant and worked on some of their projects as well, the multi-center investigator-initiated studies, which really started the whole moving more towards CRO world, and went to CRO world for a couple years, and then went over to the sponsor world. I ended up experiencing really bad burnout and kind of a mental health crisis. And I was like, you know what? I got to figure out what I actually like about this industry or I'm leaving because I can't do this anymore. And that's when CRPM was born. It was really just, I noticed throughout my career that we as an industry do not take project management seriously. We don't take anything really seriously with planning. We kind of just throw it and run and see what sticks to the walls. And that's true across labs, sites, CROs, and sponsors, since I've been able to kind of see that from each of those areas. And the silos within clinical research. And that's a very common one that I saw all the time. I actually became a PMP whenever I was a study coordinator because I realized that what I was doing was project management. And
it basically is, right?
It 100% is. Everything a coordinator does is. And that's when I started really training my coworkers and everything. And from then on, I kind of always had like a project management workshop going on with different organizations. And I decided that's really where my passion was, and mentoring as well. So that's kind of where CRPM was born. I made a post about my mental health on LinkedIn, and I was really shocked to see how much it resonated with people in clinical research. This was about 2.5 years ago, though. So back then, I don't know if you guys remember, it was really not talked about. It wasn't discussed. It was something that we just kind of swept under the rug. So although I got a lot of support, I also got a lot of backlash. And I dealt with a lot of things on that side of things. So I kind of disappeared from LinkedIn for a little while until I felt comfortable coming back and not worried about a lot of the backlash I was receiving. And then I was able to kind of start speaking freely about my mental health and the mental health issues in clinical research, as well as educating the clinical research community on things that'll make their lives easier, including all the project management work that I talk about, and telling everybody essentially that they are clinical research project managers, no matter their role, because a clinical research study has a beginning, an end, and objectives to meet. So if you're working on any part of that and what you're working on has a beginning, an end, and objective to meet, then you are a project manager. And so if we think about it, our studies, phase 3 study with 40,000 patients, has over 40,000 sub-projects in it. It's the most complex projects in any industry. And the fact that we don't take it seriously is just something that is really hurting our patients and our clinical research professionals, because we're wasting so much money, so much time, whenever we could be doing this so much better.
Yeah, that's something, I mean, that's crazy. And I don't know anything like formally about project management, but it's always occurred to me that it seems, what we do at a site is essentially project management. Is that something that you find yourself doing, or like, do you work with sites to, train their staff to be like, look, here's how to be a project manager, or see yourself maybe in that reframing? Does that seem helpful for sites, and something that you do pretty actively?
Yeah, actually, I try to talk to sites first. That's really my baseline, because I'm a big believer in clinical research cannot move forward without sites. And that's where the groundwork is, truly. Our sites have so much power in this industry because we can't do our work without them. But also recognizing that our coordinators are probably, not all of them are going to remain at the site level. So many of our coordinators are going to move up to CRO world and project and sponsor world, and project management is essentially each of those. So starting at the site is really where I like to start with, and why I have a course. It's a free webinar that we do. There's a series that we do for free, because that's my part of giving back to the industry. And so we do project management for all clinical research professionals. And that's where we start with sites, really anybody, because we start talking about what is a project manager. And then that's when people realize, oh crap, I am a project manager. I should be listening. And so we start there, but also I do, training specific for sites if they ask, all those kind of things. So if anybody's listening and wants to do some of these free webinars for their organizations, or if you want to talk about some corporate training or anything like that, you can always reach me on LinkedIn. But that's really my passion, is trying to help the clinical research community do what we do better, because it's outrageous that 90 to 95% of drugs that make it to clinical trial don't make it to market, because they already have millions of dollars in testing, so much years in testing, preclinical, that they can't all be failing because of scientific rigor. It has to be something about how we're actually conducting the studies.
Yeah, I mean, you think there's just widespread mismanagement from top to bottom? I mean, so yeah, no, I would like to talk after this, because I'm curious about, maybe bringing some of that mentality, to my site, as we continue to grow. I do think that's, an interesting way to sort of reframe what a coordinator does. And then, this comment that kind of makes me laugh is, meanwhile, when coordinators are applying to PM jobs, they're being asked about project management experience, and maybe not realize that like what they've been doing is essentially project management.
1000%. And that's one of the things we talk about too, is what you're doing in your daily life. What is it or what do you call it in project management? So are you trying to, for instance, this is a good one for coordinators. Like, okay, are you trying to manage the expectations of the PI, the CRO, the study sponsor, everybody else in between. That's stakeholder management. That's what you do every single day, stakeholder management. If you're looking at a protocol and you're looking at all the things that can go wrong, that's risk management and, outlining risk management. And that's something that I'm so excited to see that's reiterated so much in ICH GCP E6R3 is that there's requirement for a risk management plan and taking these risks into consideration. So I love the fact that from the industry perspective, we are starting to move more towards formal project management and actually understanding some of these things that we should be doing that we historically haven't been. But that's exactly right. Coordinators, if you haven't heard me say it before, hear it now. You're a project manager. 99.999% of us in clinical research are project managers. You may still work on some operations things like, running a site, for example. That might be partly operational, but there's so much of that is also project focused as well. So it might be starting up a new study, all those kind of things. But absolutely, every single thing you do in clinical research is pretty much project management.
Yeah, no, again, I love that. It seems intuitive, but maybe not something that jumps out at you if you're running a site, I love that kind of stuff, kind of under the radar. I'm curious too about the sort of, I've seen a lot more posts recently about burnout and, mental health issues and clinical, go to Reddit and scroll through the clinical research subreddit and you'll see like so many people, just having a hard time, man. And it is, you talk about all the stakeholders. It's challenging to like try to make everybody happy. Coordinators getting screamed at by PIs. It's crazy out there. Do you see like any clear distinction in like sponsor CRO site roles where like it seems to be worse than others, or is it just sort of increasing across the board, do you think?
I don't know if it's increasing or if we're just getting more the ability to talk about it out loud. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that it's new. I think that everybody in clinical research has kind of always felt this way. It's probably increasing as our budgets are decreasing and our timelines are increasing or are faster. And the expectations, especially post-COVID, where we made things happen very quickly, but the reality is that we were in a pandemic and we couldn't leave our houses and we were fighting a pandemic. That can't be the expectation moving forward. And that's what I've seen a lot of sponsors expect, as well as CROs. But I think across the board, everybody really deals with their own unique challenges. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about my background is that I've been able to see it from all the unique places and understand, okay, that coordinator has 12 studies. Like, that's not something easy. They can't enter data in 24 hours, or maybe they haven't replied to your email because they're seeing your patients. But then also from that perspective, the CRA world, right? Where yes, the CRA is asking you all these things, but they're asking them because their CTM, their project manager, the sponsor is requiring that. And also they're on site so many days a month, they're traveling, and they're still working towards that stakeholder responsibility as well. And they have crazy timelines. And then even at the sponsor level, it's the same thing, right? We're still working towards stakeholders, we're stakeholder approvals while also trying to make sure that all the other pieces of the puzzle and the machine are working together to bring us to that conclusion. So I think that that's actually something in clinical research we need to be better about, is understanding that no matter where you are in the spectrum of things, and no matter what silo you're in, if you're a site, CRO, sponsor, service provider, we are all going through it. And just remembering that each other are humans, you know what I mean? There's no reason for hostile workplaces. They shouldn't exist. And those kinds of things are happening every single day in this industry and were previously something that was just expected, and that we can't allow that to continue to occur. Even reading some of these comments like break my heart, where it's saying like, just get used to no sleep. That's not okay. That's not sustainable. And we as an industry really need to get better about talking about work-life balance, about wellness, before we become the patients that we're trying to treat.
Yeah, good point. I know Dan can probably attest to this. At the site level, at least, everything's an emergency. You want everything right now. I don't know how does your staff deal with that, Dan? Or do you feel like they have a pretty good grasp on it? I feel like there is this sort of like expectation that you drop everything, but you're doing it every 5 minutes because somebody's in your ear.
Yeah,
God knows what.
I think coordinator may be the most stressful role. I'm glad I had a stint at a CRO as a contract CRA, because I think project managers have a lot more stress than I thought previously. I mean, they only get contacted when someone has a problem, and it's usually like not happy people contacting them. So to deal with that constantly, I don't think coordinators deal with that level of dissatisfaction necessarily. Um, Patients are usually happy, at least on my side. I mean, it's rare that a patient's not so happy. Monitors are usually neutral, but PMs, they get the worst of every. You don't call a PM unless there's an issue. Otherwise, there's no reason to call them necessarily. But at the site, the coordinators, yeah, I mean, everything's priority. I told them how to streamline the workflow, and I try not to give more than like 3. Right now, we only have 3 studies a coordinator. I think we can do more. I think we can do like 5. But yeah, I mean,
That's amazing.
it's leadership
Just
ultimately.
that.
Yeah, it's
I feel like
leadership.
if any other coordinators, I would love to know, like coordinators, how many studies you guys are managing right now.
I heard
And even
12. I heard all
CRAs.
kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even as a project manager, as talking about what you are of like all the people reporting to me that there's an issue, I had 3 studies. And so that I had like 10,000 people across all 3 studies that could be contacting me because they had a problem.
I
And
had
of
so
course,
much respect for the PMs after that stint as a
mhm,
as a CRA, because I would only contact him. It was a he when I needed something or something was like urgent, right? And
mhm.
it's very easy for that person, if I put myself in his role, to lose your cool, right? Because eventually you get jaded, I think, which is the danger. And this is why you have, PMs and people in this industry that kind of they start with that attitude as a default, which is typically not good. So it's sad, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you make a good point, especially those that come in kind of jaded. It's almost like they haven't, but I've recognized a lot of those CRAs, CTMs, PMs, they haven't experienced life at a site either. And so I always recommend if you're getting into this industry, start at the site because you're not going to understand what our bloodline or, our prime site, what we need to actually continue clinical research needs. And I mean, as a coordinator, I was probably managing 15, 18 studies. And so I love the fact that you have 3 to 5. Like, oh
Jeez.
my gosh, that sounds amazing. But
Yeah,
I
no,
know
I'll
that
spoil them. You know what's
even like
crazy though, Jess?
CRAs.
You see this in
Okay.
your story. I mean, based on our podcast, you have somebody coming in with like so much light and positive spirit, right? And then they just get beat down like over and over and over again until they just lose that spirit. To me, it's one of the saddest things ever. And I watch it from afar. I see from my
Mhm.
CRA Academy, CRC Academy, people come in enthusiastic. They come through our internship. Boom. They're like, on top of it, optimistic. Then they get hired by someone and then they like check in with me 3 months. Hey, everything's good. 6 months, they start asking things like, "Is this normal?" They're asking me to do that, and I just see that spirit like just fizzle out, and I lose touch, and there's a lot of them. So I think the industry has like a pretty big problem. I mean, to some extent, it's the individual's job. Like you fixed your own problem. You didn't rely on no one fixed your issues. You fixed it.
Right. Mhm.
So I think it boils down to like a little bit of individual responsibility, obviously leadership at the organizations, but how can we enforce that? Ultimately that's 1 or 2 people calling the shots.
Yeah. No, and I think one of the quote that immediately came to mind is like when your most passionate people become quiet, that's when you need to be concerned. And I can't agree with that more because that's exactly what happened to me. Like I've always been very gung ho on doing things, speaking at conferences, all those kind of things, until I had a compliance officer say to me verbatim that only the whistleblowers get hurt in this industry. And I was like, that alone ruined my spirit for this industry for a very long time, where the checks and balances that I always considered to be in place and I always believed to be in place had shown that they were actually not. And that's when I kind of had to start like it ruined me for a long time. And because of how do you come back from that thinking of like my entire world had just been crushed because of this. And it very well could have been, and almost was, when I stepped out of clinical research, until I decided, no, we're going to change this. Like I feel like our generation is so much more about the patients. And I say this on so many conversations I have. Our generation is so much more about the patients and about doing the right thing, not as much about the money. That's the light that I saw, really, was, okay, who are the people I know? They're going to be running this industry in the next 10 years. How do we shape it to make our stakeholders, our priority stakeholders, to be our patients rather than our investors? And I've kind of just been going through, what kind of keeps me going is healing the industry that broke me. And how can I help heal that industry? And how can I bring about resources and conversations that people can't bring forward, or they don't feel safe enough to bring forward, so that they don't lose their light and they don't lose that passion for an incredible industry that can be so good, but we have to make changes in it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you guys think about this. Actually, no one really knows this, so sharing it here. Obviously, someone anonymous came on my pod. We shot it with Daniel, like professionally done, about PM, right? And she was talking about outsourcing and overseas, and this was early. This was like 2 years ago. She said it's starting. These jobs are getting shifted overseas because of largely what you're highlighting, which is burnout and pay, right? So they can make more profit overseas. She didn't want me to post that interview, so I never did. But the things she said, and that's how you know it's like raw. The things she said are actually happening today as far as outsourcing. And
Yeah.
I wanted to get both of your guys' thoughts on that. I don't think coordinators can be outsourced, but I mean they're trying. But like at CROs, you're seeing it. PM, study startup specialists, CTAs, all the financial people are already in India or Europe or Mexico. I mean, what do you think that's going to do to this? Because this is now becoming a global problem as far as burnout.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I talked to someone recently who runs a site who has managed to outsource like a lot of what they do, even some of the data entry, some of the pre-screening activities, some of the other stuff. So I think it is happening even a little bit on the site side. I mean, obviously you can't, like, what we do still very much involves standing in front of the patient and or being in a room with the doctor. So there's only so much that can be done. But I was a little bit surprised, that we're seeing that at the site level. It seems, and again, I'm not always that sharp on like the sort of macro trends or whatever, but doesn't this seem to be like a cyclical thing that happens? Like we outsource a bunch of stuff out and we realize, oh, this sucks actually. So we sort of bring things back this way for a little while. And then it's probably like, oh, well, this is expensive. There's a reason we didn't do this. And we go back again. I don't know. It's interesting. And obviously, like, I don't know, look around. Like there's still a shitload of layoffs that you see on my LinkedIn stream. People who've been looking for jobs for like over a year, like that blows my mind. Crazy. So it's not, you're getting burnt out and like anxious and stressed out when you're in the industry, and then you're getting it like probably twice as bad when you're not able to get back in the industry. It's sort of a hard to win,
Yeah, absolutely. I think the craziest thing I saw before I left like pharma was they were outsourcing country trials managers outside of the US. And I'm like, because they wanted to save money. And I'm like, but these are we cost more because our expertise is in FDA regulations and in our country. So you want to save money by decreasing quality. But quality should be our number one thing when we're dealing with human subjects. Again, this was all like around my whole spin-off of spinning down of what the heck is this clinical research bullcrap that I actually thought this was.
Well, the quality being first sounds very nice, but it's not true. It's not how they think. The way they think, especially at these larger CROs, is just enough quality in order to not piss anyone off. That's very different than let's focus on the quality. And they'll never say that at any conference, but we can see between the lines, guys. Come on. That's what it is. And sites do it too, by the way. Like, hey, I told Lon, all right, you got some outstanding queries. I mean, you should answer them, but oh, you got a screenings? Well, do that first. Just don't like piss off the monitors. So it's just enough quality to keep it going. And CROs do this at scale across every vertical, right? Like, hey, just enough quality. It's not focus on the quality. No, somebody in India or Europe knows enough about the FDA to like not get us in trouble, and it's cheaper. It's a no-brainer.
It's so wild.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess sites, and I don't know, this is where I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen as there's more consolidation in these site networks. What's going to happen? I think for smaller sites, it's a nice opportunity because like I'm not a publicly traded company where your number one priority is returns for your stakeholders, not building something that's like sustainable and good for the community and of the highest quality. And it's a point you made earlier, Dan, that now like it all kind of circles in. I think like the longer you're in this industry and the more you realize just how messed up things are, like it can like knock you down. I know like I come across as like a cynical person. I'm actually a very optimistic person, but definitely the more I learn and the more I hear like how things work and how, I don't know, in my mind, again, very messed up it is, it's hard, it's hard to be optimistic and like want to be a part of it because things are messed up, man. It's not good.
I mean, I remember when this moment happened to me, and I'm a site owner, and I thought I had a different ideal, I guess, of what research is versus the reality of what I saw. Like that happened almost my first year I was in. So it happens. Like everybody deals with it, and I'm a business owner. Like I can kind of control my outcomes to some extent. Employees can't. And if they don't, look at what Clara said in the comment. I should move to Mexico and get a country trial. Do you know how many Americans live in Mexico City? I just went there last year. Like there's a shit ton. There's neighborhoods in Mexico City. No one speaks Spanish. Like it's just expats. And they're living like kings and queens out there. So you're joking, Clara, I know. But people are doing it.
It's not out of the question.
No.
Which is so crazy, though. Like how, you know what I mean? And even if the stakeholders are their number one priority, I'm sorry, if their shareholders are the number one stakeholder for them, why are they wasting so much money on trials that they aren't even putting the time into to make successful? Like, that's why I'm like so mind blown about it, because so many individuals are not, okay, let me rephrase that. So many executives at some of these organizations are so money driven, but they will not they'll spread money crazy across a lot of different programs, a lot of different projects, knowing that our development rate or approval rate is 90 to 95% failing. Why aren't we taking a step back and saying, okay, how are we spending our money? How is there any processes? Are we seeing anything with lessons learned to say, why are we still doing the same thing over and over and over again? Just like you said with Brad, with like outsourcing, we do this every few years. The pharmaceutical companies bring everything back in-house and go to different companies for it, or sorry, different countries for it because it's cheaper. And then quality declines. And then we start resourcing US again. And then it's just this cycle. And it's just like, please show me the ROI on doing this and what you're getting from it. Because if you're finding somebody for half the pay for the role that needs to be conducted and run, are they actually even going to efficiently and effectively run that study? What are you compromising by cutting the budget in certain areas? And one other thing, sorry, this leads to my other soapbox in clinical research, where companies say they're going lean and they say that's why that they're starting to lay off people. That is not how lean methodology works. Lean is decreasing the processes, not the workforce. So there's so much in our industry that money is the driving factor that they're not taking a look to see, are we actually being effective with the money that we're spending? And with that, your stakeholders will be more satisfied, your patients will be more satisfied, the whole industry would be more satisfied if they just took the time to look and see, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And what can we do better? But that's just my soapbox.
No, you're right. I'm guessing the problem is like so many, it's very short-sighted, right? Like if someone comes to me and is like, hey, what we're doing costs too much and you're going to get fired if you don't do something about it. I'm not going to take a long-term investment in like making things better. I'm going to say, hey, cool. How quick can I save money? I'm going to start firing people and outsourcing the jobs and make them cheaper. And then when they come to me and say, hey, quality or timelines are jacked, fix it. You're not going to take the time to invest in something sustainable and actually fix the problem. You're going to save your job by bringing everything back and doing that. And so you get stuck in this weird feedback loop where you never really win. You just keep making the same mistakes over and over. So because you're trying to solve a very short-term problem.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, is it's a short-term solution that consistently causes bigger problems. And, even bringing my project manager brain, the iron triangle is one thing that I feel like every clinical research professional should know, because then they can also explain why there has to be a balance between quality, timeline, and budget in order to achieve the scope. And you can't expect it to be a fast timeline and cheap budget to have a high quality project. And that's just how it is. You get to choose two. You can have it fast and cheap, but the quality is going to suffer. Or you can have really good quality and fast, but it's going to be expensive. Or you can have really good quality and it's going to be cheap, but it's going to take a long time. That's the only options. There's no way around it.
Yeah, and there seems to be a real just reticence to accept that fact, right? And instead just try to juggle them in a way that oftentimes none of them are really optimized in any way. I want to hit a couple questions here, if it's okay. This is one actually I was curious about. Does any specific sort of PM resources that you'd recommend, or software, anything along those lines that you recommend, or that tend to be sort of standard used?
Sure. So visit windows. That's one of the things in the EDC that I try to ask for as a PM. And so that's something that you can absolutely ask your sponsor, your CRO, if that can be implemented, or if you're already there, go ahead and talk to your EDC provider, because they are able to kind of provide that visit window with a calendar and all that kind of stuff in order to know if they're in window, if they're out of window. But also some CTMSs allow that as well. There's a couple different things there. But unfortunately, in clinical research, it's so complex. And so there's not really a great way to say, to have like a project management software that's going to cover the entire project. What I say there is that picking out your specific part of the project is what will help you a lot there. So if you want to figure out what all your items are that you have to complete for a task or for the project that you have, you can create a Trello board, and that'll bring essentially your work breakdown structure. And then utilizing calendar reminders and those kind of things. Unfortunately, like I said, with proprietary data and all of the other things that go into clinical research, there's not great software out there right now. I know that IQVIA and Florence and a couple of others are kind of working on like that one software solution or whatever that's going to be, but I don't know what that's going to include. Right now, it's really theory, and I like to teach things that are actually accessible to everyone rather than it being a software that you have to pay for. So unfortunately, a lot of the things I do teach are templates and spreadsheets and those kind of things, just because I've not found a software out there yet that really helps with the complexity of clinical research. But if you've found one, please comment or send me a message or something, because I want to look into it.
Well, at the site, we tend to spend so much time like in our CTMS, like their site CTMS, and none of them, in my experience, are really the great operational tools, but don't really cover the full breadth of project management. We're using Asana now, which I think is a project management specific program. But also we're a bunch of site level people, so we don't know the best way to use it exactly yet. So I think there's probably been some things out there, but I'm guessing a lot of sites have gaps in how they're doing that stuff. If I had to guess,
right, Asana is great, and so is Monday. That one's a good one too. But again, those are just project management software, MS Project, that kind of stuff. But like you said, site or study. If you're a study coordinator and you have one study or 3 studies, you might be able to manage it on there. But if you are a project manager at the study level or the sponsor CRO level, it gets more complex because you can't really narrow it down because you are overseeing so much. With so many different pieces and stuff going into it. So unfortunately, some people are saying Google Sheets and Google Notebook LM also.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played with Notebook LM. I'm not familiar with that.
I haven't either.
Something to look into. Yeah, no, I think again, it's a fascinating topic for sites where it's not, I don't think it's emphasized like the project management side, even though again, it's essentially what it is. And if you're a coordinator and that's all you've done, it's not really a language you speak necessarily. Anything else in the comments you want to pick up on there?
I like this site CTM versus EDC versus EMR. Such a big disconnect. Prime for a startup. Yes, absolutely. I say this all the time. Why the heck if you're going to come up with a software, talk to us first, for the love of God. Talk to a clinical research professional so that you're actually solving a problem that we have and not a problem you think we have. Because they're out there solving all kinds of weird problems that we don't actually have, and they're causing us more trouble than it's worth.
Well, and there are, some of the CTMS systems are trying to sort of be like the EDC or, work on the back end through EDC. So if you're entering, I never understood why, like, look, if I'm metadata and I have Rave, I don't know why I would have created like a site facing portal that's not EDC, but it's data collection. And it looks like the flow of data collection, because as a coordinator, I don't actually give a shit about EDC. It's not for me. It's for you. And if you remember, there was a time when the sponsors would come on site to get the paper data and they would put that stuff somewhere. That work has just been pushed onto sites instead in a way that is not really efficient or useful, or we don't want to do it, really.
And you shouldn't. Like the source documents, why the heck are the sites having to come up with those? You have the EDC. Why can't you have come up with everything you need for each visit. Why are the sites having to do that? And so
they
how
used
much
to
time is
give it to
wasted
you.
there?
They did used to.
And they should.
There are some,
why don't they?
The device trials we do tend to give us like decent source that's already built. I don't understand either. Like,
I've been told from CRAs why. So that, because I complained about this a lot at SIVs, and they said, yeah, we used to. I said, yeah, I remember you guys used to. It was awesome. She said the FDA doesn't like it because then it means the PI. We don't know that the PI actually had to read the protocol, because like
PI isn't doing those source documents.
Well, PI is not reading that protocol anyway. So even if it's just the coordinator is going to end up making it. Right?
But I also want to know where the FDA said that, because I've heard stuff about the FDA not liking it, and I'm like, okay, FDA, if that's your stance, I want to know why, because it's actually increasing the risk and causing more deviations and all this other stuff.
I want to address this question and hear your opinion, because I disagree with this, that there's more in source than EDC. And here's the thing. So maybe in the beginning, when you're screening a patient, you're pulling medical records. But if I'm seeing a patient, I'm only seeing them because of their study participation. And I'm only seeing them to collect the data points that I'm being paid to collect, and nothing more. Things do come up, I agree. And yes, that can go in source. But I think this is one of those sort of overblown things that, again, what are we paid to do? We're paid to collect the predetermined data points at each visit. We are glorified data collectors. I know that sounds bad, but that's what we are as clinical research coordinators. I'm not treating a patient. I'm not calling in their meds. I'm not really doing much beyond collecting predetermined data points. I guess I've heard this argument. And am I wrong? Is that overly simplistic to say that? I mean, I feel like maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know.
I agree. I don't really know what it would be either besides screening, but again, that's EDC, and you're going to have a screening thing a lot of times in EDC too. You're not collecting extra information, because if you're collecting extra information, you're actually performing a protocol deviation.
Yeah,
and
I don't want it.
So there's also more issues there. So yeah, it should be the exact same. If not, somebody comment and tell us what we're doing wrong.
It's for CYA, because cover your ass. So that's correct if everything's going according to plan, but it's very rare that actually happens. Patients are supposed to bring back 10 pills. They brought back 15. EDC is going to query you, CRA is going to ask you. So if you write it in your source, they don't need to ask you. So there's ways where it's like more efficient to have source than just EDC. What I think is the real stupidity in this space is why didn't Meta, who's becoming irrelevant, I mean, slowly, why didn't they just give eSource to sites for free when they were like completely controlling the industry?
Yeah.
Here's eSource. It doesn't need to be a metadata study or not, but now you got all these sites using it, and every sponsor is going to continue to use your EDC because the sites are already. That was a big mistake.
I think there are EDC site or EDC company vendors, whatever you want to call them, doing that now.
Yeah, Medrio.
Yeah.
Although Medrio's, I don't know if I can talk about it. It's not the best because there's not place. So this is back to your question. Why not just EDC? We have a study where it's Medrio's direct to EDC source, right? I still tell my staff, still use Creo, at least write a note for every visit, because it's rare that things are going to go according to plan. Like, write down a narrative of what happened.
Yeah, right.
So that's what source I think is for, and that can't really go in the EDC because it would be a nightmare for for that.
Yeah, you don't want a bunch of free text, unstructured data in your EDC,
Right.
probably.
Right, but I still don't know. I feel like even then that just means our EDCs aren't robust enough to capture what we need to capture. Like, I know she mentioned like safety collection, but that should all be an EDC as well. You know what I mean? And then, if something doesn't go as planned, then I kind of feel like we need to know about it. But if, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it should be
you either need to know it or you don't need to know it. And
there's not an in between. Like, how do we
like for renal, like, we have we do a lot of these GLP studies now. Thank God they're keeping us busy. And you get a lot of things that are outside the protocol, like, oh, well, you need, this person may need an ultrasound now of the abdomen. And so you got to put that somewhere. It doesn't really go in the EDC. I mean, yeah, you can do unscheduled visit, but then it's going to ask all these queries. So it's like, in a way, it makes more sense to just have it documented somewhere else.
So, and I think that we kind of pivoted from the original conversation with the question too, though, because there's absolutely things that we need to store for patient information, patient safety, all of that. I think the initial thing was really just, why is the site developing the things that the sponsor knows they need? And so, yes, we're going to have some more information other places, but if we already have all this information in one place, and that's a good starting point, why are all the sites developing source when we have exactly what you need? We just need to put it in a form that's printable.
Well, that's always been confusing because, ideally, shouldn't research follow the same basic methodology, which is we should all be collecting the same data in as uniform of a way as possible instead of 100 sites doing it all differently from one another. Which,
right.
Again, it seems completely counter to the whole concept. Like, we want consistency.
Right. Because look, if our CRAs go on site and they're trying to monitor, they have to look totally different places for the same data point to verify. Or, if one site misses something on their source document and, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, the CRA missed it too. That's human error and expected in a lot of ways. So why aren't we just consolidating? Why aren't we making it, again, quality by design and not this other stuff, which again, that's another thing in ICH, the new revision that I'm excited about is quality by design, because that's going to force us to look at some of these things and how we can make our studies higher quality from the beginning.
And to go back to the original question, something that's also bugged me a lot over the last couple of years, but do you guys see there being benefit to some of these EMR to EDC extraction tools? I don't use an EMR to record research data. We use a CTMS, which maybe you can just flip it, but I saw a lot of investment on the EMR, and maybe that makes sense in academic institutions or cancer centers, maybe especially. Is that enough to make a big impact? And even Dan, how much? It sucks, but how much time are you really wasting entering data? It doesn't take me 3 days to enter a visit. I can enter a visit in 20 minutes probably.
It's an entry level job. You can outsource. That is something you can outsource overseas. I haven't done it. I would hire an admin who would do that, which we have had an admin in the past, do pre-screening and data entry, and then leave the query resolution to the coordinators. I think that's the model to go. The other model would be to outsource that overseas, like to Mexico or India, but I kind of don't want to do that.
Sure.
I want to help the Yuma market. One of the reasons why we're here is to hire locally and kind of build an ecosystem here. So it's more of a principle thing, but yeah, I mean, you can probably do that, especially with eSource.
And I think it's not as big of a deal for standalone research sites, but sites that are, standard of care, academic medical centers, oncology, all those kind of things. When I was at Vanderbilt, having that Epic, having Epic be able to go into REDCap was essential. It made it so much easier because, those doctors' notes can kind of be anywhere.
Right.
And if we're trying to pull data from the time that they were diagnosed. So in that way, I absolutely agree. But with standalone research sites, it is probably absolutely pointless.
And
but
it's low value work.
those,
It's totally
Right.
low value work. Like that's not,
Yeah.
to Brad's point, that's not coordinator. Well, at least it shouldn't be. It's, to me, that's entry level. Here's how you do this job type. Like first day on the job, put this in here. Like you see like 180 pounds, you put that there. Like it's not that hard.
Yeah, but I mean, I will say there was value from that perspective, but
Yeah.
also that kind of goes into the structure as well for why, or like if there's always data people or if your coordinators are pulling up all that data or whatever it is. So I can see the good and the bad for sure.
The value is like in using your brain, right, to problem solve, not really passive work. And I think AI is also, we haven't talked about that, but I know some startups that are working on direct data entry AI, but they're getting a lot of pushback from the big players. That's how it is.
I mean, direct data entry was essentially blessed by FDA guidance in like the 2013, maybe even sooner than that. And we still haven't really like jumped that over that bridge yet. That kind of stuff I'll never fully understand, like why we're not taking advantage, which also makes me sometimes skeptical of new FDA guidance that comes out. Like, hey, cool, but are we going to do it? If we're not going to do it, who gives a shit? You can write
2035. 2035.
I hope that.
Right? No, I mean, like if you think about it, we wouldn't have even shifted as much as we did to tech if it weren't for COVID. Like we were forced to. I mean, before that, we were all still having to argue about EISFs and remote monitoring. Like that wasn't too long ago, which is wild to think about, but it literally took a global pandemic for us to adopt that technology. And we're literally on the cutting edge of science with everything else. And we won't do things like this. We won't explore.
That was the biggest innovation after a once in a lifetime catastrophe where you would expect tons of like completely changes the industry. And really all it did was make the majority of sites go to eSource. Not even maybe the majority, but
not even I would say EISF, not even eSource.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, a lot of the things a lot of things we saw are now like coming back. Like we don't see as much remote monitoring. I don't see. I mean, I just had a study with a couple of major sponsors that are like they're not offering any more of the home health or like travel nursing type stuff for the more remote visits. So I feel like again some of the stuff is almost retrenching.
Some of the stuff is like while we're on this Zoom or StreamYard, my coordinator texted me because this particular study ends enrollment in a month and they're trying to get all those sites to screen, and we finally got one. She came in and she said, oh, the EICF is down study wide and there's nothing we can do. The patient's been here like an hour already, and they refuse to allow us to use paper consent. Like, so they had to send the patient home. We're not guaranteed that patient's ever coming back. I told them give that patient $40 at least for their time. I don't care if I or B or not. Just give them $40. Hopefully they come back. But like tech can go wrong too. It's like study wide and you don't want paper ICF and it's right there. Like we can just continue with the visit. No, has to be all ICF. Sorry. And nobody bothered to tell us, about this too. So yeah, it's can go both.
I mean, that's risk mitigation, right? Like that's something that could be stopped so early on in the game.
Yeah.
It's just so fascinating.
Well, it boils down to the people.
Nobody's like, oh, you know what? What if we lose internet? Nobody said that.
It boils down
nobody
to
in that project planning committee.
I would guess it boils down to what we started this episode with: burnout and people being jaded, and they'll figure it out when, yeah.
All right. Well, we've come full circle then. So,
Oh, and somebody asked about my shirt. So I don't know if you can see it.
It's like a walk in the park.
Nice.
Jurassic Park, that is.
Right.
They're bringing back some
exactly.
dinosaurs? Did you see that story? They're
What?
bringing back some woolly mammoths and stuff. There's like a big project going on to reverse engineer a woolly mammoth and bring it.
There's no way that'll go
That
wrong.
wasn't. Yeah, no. I mean, 2025 is already out to a good start. So you know what? Let's get our bingo cards ready.
Right, expect
Woolly
everything.
mammoth invasion. Cool.
Very good. Hey guys, thanks for coming on today. Any last words as we hit the last couple minutes here?
Follow Jess and
absolutely.
make sure that you say hi to her at SOS, which is in Oklahoma City, which you got to book your tickets for the Omni Hotel ASAP.
Beautiful
And follow
hotel.
Jess. And follow Jess.
So looking forward to it. We're building a blanket fort again.
Yes,
excited.
that's right. That's right.
And it's going to be kind of like a sensory area, nice spot to just kind of go away, get away from the hustle and bustle. Oh, somebody just put a link to woolly mammoths.
Yeah, facts. We only
There
say
you go.
facts on this show.
We need to plan. We need to mitigate that risk. So, but yes, thank you guys. I appreciate the laughs and just maintain your mental health. You're the only one watching out for you, and just remember, the companies would replace your job tomorrow if something happened to you, and your families can't do that. So make sure you put yourself first and watch out for the burnout and everything that can come along with this industry. But be vocal. You're not the only one going through it. So appreciate
All
you
right,
guys.
Follow Jess, follow Dan, and we'll be back next week. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Thank you.